Hello and welcome to Destination Draft Day. I'm Michael Rockman with Nick Durst. Today, on this Friday afternoon, we got an absolutely special segment, a running back special, one that maybe is underappreciated in today's NFL, the running back position. But I tell you what, this class has a lot of very good talents. But first and foremost, Nick, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Michael. It's the weekend. Looking forward to continuing to watch some baseball. And we're getting closer to the draft, so I know you are very excited. We had our show go into overtime this past Monday, but we got to thank the one and only Chris Landry for joining us and doing some QB talk. I really didn't get the chance to digest my QB list with him, but it's all good. You guys got through everything, and we had the breaking news on Sam Darnold. We'll see what happens with Teddy Bridgewater, because right now it looks like he's still going to be a Panther, which is a little tricky, and I would be curious to see how that plays out in the locker room. And some minor news this week: the Eagles bring back Jordan Howard on a one-year deal, and the Bengals release longtime running back Giovanni Bernard. So looks like the Bengals could be looking for a running back here in the draft.
Yeah, and Giovanni Bernard should be able to find a place to land. He's definitely an asset in the backfield, but I think the Bengals are just looking to get cheaper at a position that they probably aren't going to be using as much. Joe Mixon, obviously a very talented, three-down capable running back. If you can get, a cheap day three guy that can kind of just fill in that backup role for low value, that's probably the better bargain in terms of what the Bengals need to do.
Yeah, just surprising. You don't usually see people get cut in April that are not like, the big time names who have, they're waiting for the cap hit. But it kind of sucks for a veteran player in that sense that free agency is over, the draft's coming, they're going to have to wait until May to find a team to sign with.
Absolutely. There's plenty of talent on this market that we could really see a draft where someone comes in with the plan, we need to go get a cornerback in the first round, and then maybe the board doesn't play to their favor, and then they just avoid corner altogether and look to address that position in free agency. Now, obviously, that is not crazy because that's a method that's been done before, but I think with the amount of talent that's still out there, it's definitely something that a lot of teams will have to consider.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Some people are torn on this class here. I think it's kind of a weaker running back class. I think there is some potential there to have a megastar breakout, but with the running backs, you don't really know. So many times we see these people who are not highly touted in college come in and they're superstars like Alvin Kamara. And you also get times where you have these superstars in college like Ingram or Trent. Well, Ingram's okay, but we thought he was going to be great. But how about Trent Richardson? Everyone thought he's going to be incredible. Out of the league in 3 years. So it happens. You never really know what the running back position.
Yeah, and there's so much that really comes out of nowhere. Looking at just James Robinson last year, UDFA, started for the Jacksonville Jaguars and was arguably the best rookie running back. So while there are going to be some talented picks, especially early, I think there is definitely guys, sleepers in this class that you can't overlook because there's so much talent in this class. And before we dive into the running back position, I do want to recap, last Monday we talked about quarterbacks. These are mine and Nick's top 10 quarterbacks for this class. Both of us have Trevor Lawrence, and then we really just start to go on two different paths. For me, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Kellen Mond, Jamie Newman, Kyle Trask, Davis Mills, and Ian Book at 10. For Nick, he's got Zach Wilson at 2, Kellen Mond at 3, Kyle Trask at 4, Ian Book at 5, Mac Jones at 6, Justin Fields at 7, Trey Lance at 8, Jamie Newman at 9, and Davis Mills finishing out his list at number 10. Nick, before we dive into the running back position, is there anything you want to say about this list? Just your kind of ideas on the position and what you think for some of these guys that maybe are viewed higher in your eyes compared to the consensus view.
Yeah, I don't like Jones. I don't like Fields, and I'm not too sure about Lance. I liked what I saw from Kellen Mond at the Senior Bowl, MVP. Kyle Trask had a great year, right? Ian Book, statistically the best quarterback in Notre Dame's history. So maybe I'm just a little too high on those two guys. But I don't know. I don't necessarily see Trask, Book, or Mond starting this year, but I think they could have long careers as backups in the league, 12 years, whereas Jones and Fields and Lance are going to start. But if they don't have instant success, they're not going to get that chance to start again. So, how do those guys end up, overcoming the odds and maybe becoming backups if they have to? Now, Newman, I think, is very intriguing. We didn't get to see him play last year. He was going to transfer. Could have been a big year. I know you like Newman as well. Mills, I think, also could be a higher potential. I mean, we're hearing his name a lot as somebody who, some teams like him. Maybe they want to snag him in the second round or third round, have him sit for a while. If he's in the right spot, I think, things could certainly work out for him. Newman, I think, has to go to a spot where he's going to back up in a system that works for him. Like, for example, he needs to be behind a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, where Lamar Jackson probably might get hurt, and then Newman could basically run the same system. Maybe not, as dynamic, but that would be a way to get this guy a chance to start. So that's where I have my list here. I just think Mond, Trask, and Book have the potential to be good backup quarterback in this league. And again, I said it on the show Monday. To me, this is a 2-quarterback draft. I only see Lawrence and Wilson really, rising up the ranks here, being these long-term starters. But Wilson, you have to be concerned because the Jets have not done a good job historically about taking a quarterback and grooming him and getting him the pieces around him. But, I hate to talk so negatively here, but even if Wilson, for some reason, gets the Sam Darnold treatment here, then I think he would ultimately still get another shot to start. Whereas, Jones, Fields, and Lance, if it doesn't work out for them in 4 or 5 years, they're probably looking at a Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota situation where they're going to have to take some humble pie, take a pay cut, and be a backup.
And, obviously there's a lot of pressure on all 5 of these QBs really to come into the league and really change the franchises that they'll be joining. Trevor Lawrence to the Jaguars, a team that hasn't really had a dominant QB in quite some time. The last QB that I really remember as a good starter for them, I mean, if you want to count Bortles in some of those years, you can. But really, for me, it's someone like David Garrard. So, Trevor Lawrence has a very high expectation coming in, but also the Jaguars are just wanting a QB to really set that new high for the franchise, and Trevor Lawrence certainly can do that. Justin Fields, we aren't sure where he's going to land. It sounds like Mac Jones is going to be the pick at 3, and if that happens, Trey Lance and Mac Jones really question marks to where they could go. And, Zach Wilson, again, with the Jets, it's all going to fall on how Saleh and Douglas build this team. If they can successfully put together an organization, I think Zach Wilson will have an easier job than most QBs in the league. But if they, continue being this Jets organization that's kind of struggled over these past few years, then, yeah, Wilson may have the hardest job in the league. I do like the steps they took. Having a wide receiver unit of Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, and Jamison Crowder, I think is definitely enticing, especially with Herndon at tight end. There's some value there. But, again, it's really going to come down to how they work around his strengths. How he starts out off the bat, I think, is going to be big for a guy like Zach Wilson as well. And just how well this team builds the rest of the roster around him through this draft and through the remainder of free agency.
Who do you think, real quick, from your bottom 5 has the potential to have the longest career, and in what type of role?
I think if I'm betting on someone to just last the longest, the safest maybe, it would be Kyle Trask. And, Chris Landry talked about it a little bit last Monday. I think Kyle Trask is going to be someone that isn't ever viewed as this elite quarterback, but maybe someone like a Case Keenum where he's easily brought in as a backup. If you need him to spot start over the years, I think he's very capable. The issue I have with Trask is how much he struggles in terms of just, escapability. And he doesn't have to be a mobile runner, but he has to be better at maneuvering in the pocket and keeping himself, clean on his deliveries, because that is absolutely huge in the game of football. If I were betting on upside, though, guys like Mond and Mills, I think, have the most intriguing upside in this, mid-round class of QBs. And one of these guys could very easily be looked at later on and be seen as one of the higher-end quarterbacks in this class when it's all said and done.
And you have Sam Ehlinger being drafted as a receiver.
Sam Ehlinger ranked as my quarterback 13, actually. So just missed the list. I think there's some things that you can like about him. Mobility is obviously great. Toughness. He's an aggressive player, but just he has so much lacking in terms of touch and precision on his throws that really keeps him out of my top 10. And, if I'm talking about QBs that just missed this list, 11 is Shane Buechele, 12 is Felipe Franks, 13 Ehlinger, 14 Zach Thomas, and 15 KJ Costello. So,
KJ Costello looked like last year like he was gonna rise up the ranks here, but didn't really happen for him.
Yeah, he started out week 1 with a great statistical performance, and things just kind of went downhill after that.
Yeah.
Well, as we have talked about, though, this is a running back special, so we're now going to move on to the running back position. We'll start out talking about each running back one by one in my ranks, and then we'll go on from there. So, with the 10 through 6, at number 10, we got Trey Sermon, running back out of Ohio State. One of the best things about Trey Sermon is his north and south running ability. He is a power back, and I really love his frame because a lot of times when you hear power back, you kind of just think, oh, he's not going to be able to do much in terms of, burst, but he has great burst with it. He can throttle downfield, and he's going to overwhelm defenders. Another great thing about him is his power, and he has a great frame, ability to get low and really take advantage at the point of attack to really break tackles and become, a beast in the open field. And while I have some negatives on him, I have issues about his vision, lateral ability. He's not going to juke anyone out as often as maybe someone like a Kamara or someone like a McCaffrey will. But I do think that he offers enough as an outside runner, just speed-wise, to take advantage of that. Now, I have long speed listed as an issue, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of home run plays out of Trey Sermon. But I do think you'll be able to see some nice pickups of about 4, 5, 6 yards, and those build up, especially on the stat sheet, to make for a very solid career. Trey Sermon is someone that I look at in an interesting light because I really think that if he were put in a spot where he's almost like a Latavius Murray type role, where he's, maybe the more dependable power back, but also in a reserve role in the running back room, he could be absolutely dominant. And I think, in a place maybe like Carolina, maybe Minnesota, I think he could contribute to that running back room and really benefit the other running back a lot as well. And we have a comment from the comment section. Question for you, MBRR. After you get through your top 10, give us the rundown on Brendan Knox, Marshall running back, and what type of role you see for him. Any specific fit you're high on. We'll talk about it right now. Brendan Knox, I think, is someone that has some nice burst. Obviously, the pro day was disappointing for him. I expected him to test a little bit better than he did. But at the same time, when you're watching it, he has a pretty good frame, 6 foot, 223 pounds, has nice burst, and really, I think he's a well-rounded runner. Put up 7 catches, 86 yards, so there's definitely questions about how he works as a receiver. And in terms of what I think of his running style, the biggest issue for me is I don't see enough aggression in his running style, and he wastes some steps. So mixing all those things together, there's definitely going to be some issues. But I think in terms of scheme fit, where I'd like to see him land, I could kind of see him in a place like San Francisco, and in turn, because of that, maybe a place like the Los Angeles Rams or a place like the New York Jets, who have now brought in some San Fran personnel. And you could see maybe that overlap of talent. And, I compared him to Jonathan Williams, a running back that came out of Arkansas, had some success for Indianapolis a little bit just a couple years ago. And I think really that's the kind of player you're getting. Average 4.8 yards per carry, had 9 touchdowns on the year. A guy like Brendan Knox ranked in as my running back 12, but I really do think that in the right scheme and fit, he could surprise and be one of those rookie producers that really contribute more than expected. At number 9 in my ranks, I have Jamar Jefferson, running back out of Oregon State. The Beavers, shout out to our friend Steven Nelson. One of my favorite things about Jamar is he's a long strider. He really gets these great, strides, I guess. He takes long steps in his sprints and is going to increasingly pick up yards. And he has nice contact balance despite getting these long steps and really natural vision. You watch him, he turns on these highlight films despite not being, maybe the most nimble type of runner. And I think because of that, it's because of things like his, ability to work with contact balance and then his ability to really take off after that. The question marks I have about Jermar Jefferson are his power to frame ratio. He's a little bit oversized, I think, for someone that's not really imposing as much on defenders. His overall agility, I have question marks about as well, because I don't think he's really going to shake anyone. And that's something that really would concern me as a scout, because I really want you to be, a great power guy or a great agility guy. And if you kind of, don't have a lot to offer in both positions, especially with his receiving production being a question mark as well, I get concerned. And for Jermar Jefferson, I love him. As a college football player, as a college football player, I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. Big fan of the Beavers anytime I got to watch him because of Jefferson. But, there's question marks that will be needed to be answered. Can he be a receiving back? Can he contribute in the run game as consistently without having, that elite trait that maybe he's kind of missing? At number 8, Kylan Hill out of Mississippi State. And this was one of the more intriguing cases because you watch his 2020 tape, obviously in a Mike Leach offense, he's not going to run the ball as often. But if you turn it on, you'll see some great power and quickness. He combines that to really be an effective runner and an efficient player. He slips through holes really well, and he has a well-rounded skill set. Big question mark coming out of this 2019 season was Kylan Hill in the Mike Leach system. How's he going to do as a receiver? And I think he absolutely responded with some great results. He was able to put up great numbers in so limited time. Obviously opted out about midway through the season, but from what we got to see through that Mississippi State season, he demonstrated plenty. And if you're a team that's looking for a guy in that 4th, 5th round, I think Kylan Hill could absolutely contribute in any role that you give to him. The question marks for him, I think he overthinks a little bit when he's attacking the line of scrimmage. I think there's some holes that he kind of, wants to try to make bigger carries on. Sometimes you got to accept that you're going to get 4 or 5 yards. And I think Kylan Hill, I don't hate the fact that he's, very ambitious about it, but I do think there's times where he passes up that 4 or 5 yards trying to make a big play and in turn just gets, 1 yard or even loses some yards. I do think that he plays straight up a little bit, takes a little bit off his frame. I'd like to see him get lower when he's going into contact, and maybe he'd be able to break some more tackles and offer even more power than he already demonstrates on tape. Kylan Hill, though, is someone that I really enjoyed watching, and I think he's absolutely worth the risk of, taking a Mike Leach running back that maybe produced as well as he did. One thing that I do want to say, though, I think the character concerns that have been painted onto him are kind of overblown. I think that from everything I've heard about him, he seems to be a great kid, and I think really anyone that's bringing him into their locker room is going to be lucky to have a player like that and a person like that. At number 7, Khalil Herbert, running back out of Virginia Tech. This is one of my sleepers for this class. I guess he's kind of gotten consistently put in this range now recently, but in terms of contact balance, outside running ability, and just overall anticipation, I've been a huge fan of what I've seen from Khalil Herbert. There's questions, obviously maybe doesn't have the short area burst that you'd like. He's more of a patient runner, but he just seems to find so many holes in that offensive line. And yes, Virginia Tech, obviously with guys like Darisaw and some guys next year that are going to be draft prospects, you could understand why maybe running behind that offensive line is easier. But I still think that Khalil Herbert is extremely great at processing to find these holes, find these gaps in the offensive line, and really take off for big yardage. And, in terms of question marks, though, I also want to see him become a better receiver. But I think from what I saw on tape, there was enough to be seen there as a receiver that made me trust him to put him this high. Him versus Michael Carter is a huge debate in my mind. I really want to see Herbert have success, but I think in terms of what I saw from Carter, I lean his way because of receiving production. And that takes us to number 6. So processing ability for Michael Carter is absolutely huge. There's questions about his frame. He's about 5'8", 208 pounds. Is he going to be able to be a workhorse or even get a lot of carries in a game without wearing down due to his frame? And I think it's a valid concern. Obviously, working with other fellow star running back Javonte Williams, he got a little bit of a discounted workload, and still he was able to produce. He showed great contact balance, great receiving ability. He is well-rounded as a running back. The big question, though, is frame and speed. And I think as long as he can show enough in between the tackles, he could not only contribute in the same way that he did in North Carolina, but potentially even own a backfield on his own.
Yeah,
Nick,
I think
we're talking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, the big difference, unless it's like a mega star who's just rushes for those records, in determining whether a running back is going to come in, be a third string guy or a special teams guy versus will they stick around either as a superstar or as a star or a good quality backup like Wayne Gallman was. It's, can you block? And a lot of times that's a big struggle for those running backs because they're not blocking in high school. No chance. They're just running like crazy. And then in college, it really just depends on, the offense they're in. North Carolina is more of a traditional type of offense, so maybe they do a little more blocking. But, Trey Sermon, Ohio State, they're not doing much blocking. So it all depends on your school. But blocking is always the key factor here, I think, for scouts when they're determining, player X over player Y at the running back position.
And I think especially whenever you're looking at these guys that are going to be going day 3, maybe late day 2, you're trying to get guys that can contribute in ways, whether it's you look at Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State last year. He was great as a pass blocker, and I think that's why Tennessee was able to bring him in and really kind of justify spending a 4th-round pick on a running back that was going to be sitting behind Derrick Henry for the most part. Bringing in a guy that can both, contribute as a pass blocker when needed, but also contribute as a runner is absolutely huge, especially in a league where a lot of these guys aren't going to be drafted to really be the star running back. They're just drafted to hopefully contribute to a running back room that's already producing somewhat. But now we go to the top 5 running backs, and we have the profile for each of them. Number 5, we talk about Jarrett Dokes, running back out of Cincinnati, 5'11", 228 pounds, 22 years old. You look at his stats. He had 143 carries, 673 yards, 7 touchdowns, 14 receptions. But I'm telling you, what I saw on tape, this guy is definitely capable of doing much more as a receiver. 202 yards and 2 reception touchdowns. Forgot to replace the little spiel, so we're talking about Gainwell there in the text section. But for Dokes, I think the combination of his frame, athleticism, and just overall speed that he offers at that frame is going to be imposing on defenses. We talk about strengths in his game, impressive burst, an absolutely imposing frame at 230 pounds. That's going to wear defenses down. And you saw it on tape. When they did a play action run, the defenses were selling out to make sure that Dokes was not getting this ball and taking it for big yardage. I compared him to TJ Yeldon because I think there's a lot of similarities in between their frames and receiving ability. But I think when you look at the tape, I think Dokes can really turn into much more than Yeldon had in his NFL career. I think that Dokes is worth a 2nd, 3rd round pick. But honestly, when you look at where he probably lands in this draft, we're looking at 5th, 6th, maybe 7th round for a guy like Dokes, someone that I think is going to be an absolute steal for their value in this class. Some question marks, though. I think he sometimes gets a little bit off balance with his body, throws his body around a little bit too violently, and then he kind of is left stumbling, trying to recover. And that can happen, but at the same time, you got to limit that. There's some wasted steps in terms of how he works outside, trying to really evade blocks that maybe he should have just went into and lowered his shoulder. And his overall contact balance, especially for a guy that's 230 pounds, I think there were times that he just too easily got brought down. I'd like to see him offer a little bit more lower body strength and really take advantage of these situations. Nick, when we talk about Dokes, I think one of the biggest things is just, obviously this is kind of my quote unquote hot take of the running back class, because Dokes is viewed much lower in terms of expected draft range across the consensus value. But in that day 3 range, if you're looking at a team that kind of needs a mix of power, size, and also speed, who's someone that you think could really bring in a running back, or maybe even a surprise, depth pickup that maybe Dokes could thrive on?
Yeah, it's tough, but because they have a lot of running backs now. But I think a team like the Patriots could really utilize his skill set. It's just the burst, and the fact that the Patriots are going with this 2 tight end set now. I think they're going to be looking for some running backs who can break some way. I also wouldn't rule out a team like the Buccaneers. We know Fournette's back, just a 1-year deal though, and they like to rotate things around. But there's a lot of teams that could use someone like him, and I think he's certainly going to get drafted. And I do like the Cincinnati guys. I think they just got hurt by the fact that they weren't in the power. They're not in the Power 5, so nobody saw them as much. But Cincinnati had a pretty good season this year. Dokes was a big part of it.
And we move on to running back 4, Kenneth Gainwell, running back out of Memphis, 5'8", 201 pounds, was 22 years old. And now you kind of look at what he's done over the season. This is 2019 stats. Obviously, he opted out of the 2020 season. 231 carries, 1,459 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, 51 receptions, which is receiver numbers, really. 610 yards and 3 reception touchdowns. He's one of the best receiving backs I have seen coming out of college. You look at guys like Kamara, guys like McCaffrey, and they have this ability. And I think Gainwell offers similar ability as well. He's excellent in space. He's a versatile weapon, obviously, as a receiver or running back. You can stretch him out wide if you need to, or he can be a mismatch in the backfield. And I think he has really solid power for his frame. I look at, a guy that's 201 pounds, and I'm expecting a lot of finesse and elusiveness, but I think he offers a lot in terms of contact balance and ability to really overwhelm defenders, and he does that. Now, of course, in that frame at 5'8", 201 pounds, there's question marks about his overall frame, and he needs to be a better run blocker inside the tackles. And obviously, Nick talked about it a little bit earlier. I have some question marks about his pass blocking ability, especially though. Regardless, I think he's going to contribute as a receiving weapon, so maybe his pass blocking ability won't be needed as much. But I think that there's a lot of special talent here for Kenneth Gainwell, and he could surprise early and be, one of the best running backs in this class just right out the gates. I compared him to Myles Gaskin, running back out of Washington, contributed in Miami, obviously, this past season, but I think Gainwell has a higher ceiling and could be looked at as one of the top backs in the league if he lands in the right spot. I expect him to go in that day 2 range, probably in that 3rd round, but I think there's possibility that he could slip for maybe running backs that other teams prefer a little bit more. So maybe in that 4th round you can land Gainwell, but I really think in that 3rd round is his perfect range of where to expect him. In terms of where I'd love to see him land, I've talked about it with Nick whenever we did their mock draft special. The Arizona Cardinals with a guy like Gainwell in the backfield would be absolutely extraordinary. I'm telling you, if you're in those deep dynasty leagues where you do those rookie drafts, if Gainwell lands in Arizona, pick him in the 1st round. I don't care if you have the 1st pick in the 1st round.
Wow.
Pick Gainwell, because he is going to absolutely tear it up if he is a Cardinal.
I think a good spot for him, you mentioned Christian McCaffrey. I think the Panthers is a good spot for him, because if McCaffrey needs a breather or he gets hurt again, Gainwell can do a lot of the same stuff when it comes to receiving. So that would be a bad idea there. Sam Darnold's a little gun shy right now. He's going to need that security blanket to dump it off to the running back. So I could see him potentially joining the Panthers and working very well there with McCaffrey in the backfield.
I think another underrated part of him potentially landing with the Panthers would be he could fill in for Curtis Samuel as well for roles that or for plays that Christian McCaffrey is on the field. I think he could really expand out to the slot spot and really contribute as well in that role. With running back 3, though, we got Javonte Williams. This is one of Nick's guys, absolutely overwhelming type runner. He is tenacious. He can throttle downfield. He almost seems like those old Mario Donkey Kong games where Donkey Kong throws the barrel and Mario's trying to avoid him. Mm-hmm. Javonte Williams is the barrel that is just rolling. And if you hit anyone, you are going to just get destroyed. So 5'10", 212 pounds. I think he measured in a little bit lighter than he actually plays just for athleticism at his pro day. But 20 years old, so obviously there is still a lot of youth in him. 157 carries, 1,140 yards, 19 rushing touchdowns. And you think of these big backs that are power guys like this, and you say, okay, well, they're runners, but what can they do at the catch? 25 receptions, 305 yards, and 3 reception touchdowns. So he has 3 down ability. He's a great blocker. He's a great receiver, and he is a powerful runner. In terms of question marks, I think he got a little bit used to just being able to stiff arm anyone that he wanted to. And I think it kind of made him dependent on that. I'd like to see him, lower the shoulder, maybe see him really kind of use his agility, because I think there is more than we got to see. I think there's some issues processing. He kind of got away with just being this big running back that can overwhelm everyone. And, in turn, I think he's going to need to be a little bit better at finding the holes and really taking advantage of space. And, there's questions about his agility. I do think that maybe he's not going to be the most finesse style runner, but I do think he's going to be able to contribute right away. Find him in that day 2 range. I think he's going to be a round 2 pick, almost locked in. And my comparison for him is Jay Ajayi, a running back who is really doing similar things in the NFL. And then the knee injury really started to slow him down. Jay Ajayi, obviously, most notably, a Miami Dolphin. Nick, do you think Javonte Williams could land in the exact same spot for Brian Flores and company?
I think it's possible. I think it's going to be tough, though. Maybe I'm just too high on him. I think a spot that would be great for him is the team you mentioned before, which is the Cardinals. They would give them a little bit of a, yin-yang offense here because they're so explosive with Kyler Murray. And, of course, they have Hopkins. And now they got A.J. Green. And we'll see about Larry Fitzgerald. But if you could have a change of pace guy who is just going to barrel down the field and run, and then you get to the red zone and you have the option of Murray could run it in. You could throw it up to Hopkins or you just give it off to Williams. It's going to be very dangerous there, and it would be awesome for Cliff Kingsbury, but it would be very difficult for opposing defenses.
I definitely could see it being a special combination. Moving on to the running back 2 spot, we got Travis Etienne, a running back that, he contributes in all ways. He's a receiver. He's a runner. At 5'10", 215 pounds, obviously came in a little bit higher than expected at his pro day in terms of weight. 168 carries for 914 yards this past season, 14 touchdowns, 48 receptions, 588 yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns as well. He's one of the best well-rounded backs in this class. Obviously, at Clemson, you saw it if you turned on any of the games. Really, anytime he touched the ball, he had big playability. He's great with his lower body. Even though he's kind of a thin frame running back, he definitely offers plenty of contact balance. He's got great receiving ability and great ability to really work his way through tight windows. And, the big issue for me is that he kind of runs straight up. I think he has this issue where he will open himself up for contact. I want to see him have a little bit more power that is with his upper body, with his shoulder, lower the shoulder, and find ways to create contact and shake some of those guys when he's working in traffic. And I think there's some inconsistent reads. I think with his athleticism and his overall ability to make plays, he got away with it a little bit. But at the NFL level, it's going to be harder. I think this is a day 1, maybe day 2 guy. I think running back is one of those positions where it's easy to mock them a little bit later than they actually end up going. So we could see a guy like Najee Harris and a guy like Travis Etienne both go in round 1, and I wouldn't be surprised by it. And then I look at, the play style comparison. Clinton Portis, running back for the Washington football team back in the day, was an absolutely enjoyable watch, offered receiving ability and running ability. And I think that's what we see from Etienne, the playmaking ability to really be special at the next level. Nick, Etienne is your running back 1.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the guy and really where you want to see him land in the NFL.
No, I think we've seen him do it in the big games. He maybe gets hurt a little because of the fact that he did play with Trevor Lawrence for a few years, and maybe people don't realize how great this guy can be, but his potential is sky high, like you mentioned. And a lot of times these Clemson running backs do very well and have long careers in the NFL. Maybe not as the main guy, but again, I think the Cardinals, and they're going to be in the market for a running back, and the Dolphins. But I would like to see Etienne here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it would be a great way for the Steelers to prop up Roethlisberger. They have Connors, who's been great, but they're missing things since they lost Bell. So I think adding Etienne, Claypool, of course, was tremendous last year. Juju Smith-Schuster's back for another year, and perhaps they could try to beat some teams in the playoffs by running the ball more and having the ball longer on offense.
Yeah, I think, Etienne will probably find himself going either, like we said, first round, maybe early second. And in terms of teams that I like him going to, maybe a spot like Buffalo for either Etienne or Najee Harris, I think would absolutely be phenomenal. Adding a running back to a team that's already been as efficient as it has on offense. And then there's some other teams that maybe in that early second that could very well benefit from him. James Robinson, I don't think is going to hold down the backfield entirely. So maybe a guy like Travis Etienne combined with James Robinson could really dominate and help out Trevor Lawrence, who also gets his good friend back in that same backfield.
I think Etienne, if he's available there for the Jags' second pick, I think that'd be a great fit.
And then you look at guys like teams like the Atlanta Falcons, who really have a big hole at running back, and I think in that second round they definitely could address the position with a guy like Etienne, maybe a guy like Javonte Williams, or whoever they really like in that second, third round option. But now it is time for my running back 1, and we got Najee Harris out of Alabama, 6'1", 232 pounds. I mean, right then and there, you just notice this guy is going to be a menace on defenses. And 23 years old, but I don't think that's going to really negatively impact him in the eyes of scouts. 251 carries, 1,466 yards, 26 touchdowns on the year. 43 catches, 425 yards, and 4 reception touchdowns. 30 touchdowns over the course of the season. He was absolutely huge for Alabama. He is a complete back, but in terms of what he does as a runner, I can't rave about this guy enough. He's got great frame at 6'1", 232 pounds, but he's athletic. He can hurdle you. He can run through you. He can dominate the game in any way that you can imagine. He's a receiver as well as a runner. I think you give him that typical, backfield stuff, and he's going to make plays with it. The question marks for Najee Harris are he's maybe not as explosive in terms of agility as you'd like to see. He's not going to be this huge juke you guys out of your shoes type player. But I think with his ability to lower the shoulder and really jump over defenders as well, he's going to make plays. There's questions about his long speed, but I think that was silenced during all his college football stuff, that he was able to make all these big carries. And then, he's an aggressive runner. So maybe the aggressive play style isn't going to last him as long as the more nimble running backs could do with their career. But it hasn't happened yet, and there's no reason to believe it will. I think what you see out of Harris is going to continue at the NFL level, maybe not to the same amount of touchdowns, but I think you're going to see this guy absolutely dominate. I compared him to Todd Gurley, and that is no light comparison. I think in terms of frame, ability as a runner, and versatility to offer as a receiver, this guy does it all, and I am a huge Najee Harris fan. Nick, what are your thoughts on Najee Harris? And really, in terms of this draft class, how early do you think a running back could go in this draft order, and where do you think they could land at?
Yeah, so first for Harris, the Todd Gurley comparison I like in the sense that Gurley was good for 2 years, and now he's done. So could be a short, cure of the explosiveness for Harris, because that's the way he runs. To me, I'm going to compare him to another Alabama player, and that would be Mark Ingram Jr., who came in the league. Everyone thought he was going to be great, was good, never the greatest running back in the league, but still a long career nonetheless. Now, where do I think the first running back off the board could be? Yeah, I think that we could be seeing the New York Jets take Mr. Harris with their second pick in the first round, which I believe is the 23rd pick in the draft. So that's where I think the first running back is going to go. I do believe it will be Harris. I think the Jets would be very happy with that pick.
Yeah, if I were really opening up all options, I think the guy or team, I guess, that I would consider to pick someone at the running back position, it would maybe be Miami at 18. But even then, last year, I think kind of showed us that they aren't going to overinvest in the position. So I think you're right. In that 23, 24 range, maybe someone could trade up with a team like Indy or Tennessee to get that running back that they're looking for. But for the most part, I think we will see that early 20s to late first round for that first running back off the board. And, we could see a team like Atlanta try to trade back up for a guy like Najee Harris, because we saw what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee with a guy like Derrick Henry. Obviously, two very different running backs in terms of frame. Henry's like 6'3" and add on, 20 more pounds or something. But I do think that having a successful running back to kind of control the game and really set up the play action as well as you can. We saw it in Tennessee. Arthur Smith, I think, is a big believer in that ability. And I think, a guy like Najee Harris would be a dream come true for him.
So I was interested to hear you're not concerned about his age at 23. I mean, it's crazy that we're talking 23-year-old might be old here. But if you're going to take a running back in the first round, I think you have to consider that, because if you had him for 5 years, he's 28. Maybe he's past the prime of his career. Where are you leaning here as far as like the importance of age in general for a running back?
I think age honestly has kind of gotten to a point where it's not looked at as crucially at the running back position, because a lot of these teams are taking these guys with the idea we're getting a high-level contributor for 5 years, and then we are accepting that we are moving on. And it's sad because there's a lot of great running backs, especially running backs that are able to contribute in that second contract. But a lot of teams know that they can replenish with a youthful running back in another draft class to contribute. And really, that's where the question mark comes in. And that's why the positional value has seemed to taper off a little bit, because the question now becomes, are we drafting for someone that's just going to be the first contract, and then we're kind of accepting that we don't want them back at the price that it's going to take? Or are we going to look for that type of player in the later rounds and look for someone that we want, 2-3 contracts out of instead in that first round? But as much as I'd like to talk about my rankings all day, we got another expert on the position here, Nick Durst, and we're going to bring up his rankings right now. Mine on the left, Nick on the right. Nick, talk a little bit about your rankings and your thoughts on the position.
Yeah, I think, Jefferson just missed my list. I can make the argument that he could be there at 9 and going to get Sermon out of there. And I'm sure Stevenson is probably in your top 15 with Oklahoma. But I like what I saw out of the guys for North Carolina. I feel like the way Mac Williams has built his roster, these players are coming into the NFL ready, so they can make contributions immediately from day one. Our big discrepancy here is you have Dokes at 5. I don't have him on the list, but hey, again, Dokes could easily be in my top 10. It's just tough sometimes. Felton, I think, maybe hurt a little because of the reduced season there with UCLA, but I think he could be a very serviceable running back here. And I like Hill a little better than you, but again, we're very close on that. So not too much of a discrepancy here. Some people in the college football season actually had Sermon like as their top 3 running back, but I don't think so. I really didn't want to put him on the top 10, but just felt like due to his stats, I had to. But yeah, the big discrepancy for the most part here is that I have Harris as the 4th running back, and you have him as the 1st running back. And to me, I just think that it's going to be hard for him to live up to the hype. He is 23. His lifespan might not work out too well for him because of the running style he has in the NFL. I think Derrick Henry is an anomaly in the sense that he could bruise through everybody. Brandon Jacobs was the best when it came to that, running over people. So we'll see. Like you mentioned, he's athletic though. But yeah, Etienne, I think for the last 4 years has been one of the best running backs in the country. And I'm not going to penalize him in my rankings because of the monster season Harris had, where Harris had it easy though, because he had Mac Jones, Heisman finalist, he had the Heisman Trophy winner and Devontae Smith. So it was just easy for him, and that's what I worry about with these Alabama skill set position guys coming into the NFL, especially if they're joining a bad team like the Jets. Or someone in that range, because you're not going to come in and it's not going to be easy, because you can make the argument, Michael, that Alabama had a better offensive line this past season than perhaps the Jaguars or the Jets or Lions. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think one of the few players that maybe we both kind of snubbed in terms of the public eye, Chuba Hubbard, is a very notable runner. And I think that he didn't make this top 10 may be seen as a diss, but I think in both of our eyes, it's something that we should talk about, where this running back class has a lot of guys that really could go either way. If Chuba Hubbard lands in the right spot, he could absolutely make us both look like fools for not having him in the top 10. But there's also some landing spots that on the flip side of that coin, if he lands somewhere that's maybe like an inside running team, he may have his issues and really not be much of a contributor and never see the field. So guys like Hubbard, guys like Roundtree the third, even guys like Brendan Knox, who we had a comment about, there are so many things that factor in for a running back. But at the same time, just like we talked about last week with QB, it's about landing spot, it's about opportunity, and we'll see what happens after draft day. We'll talk about guys who maybe are on this list or maybe weren't on the list that landed in spots that really could help them elevate their career opportunity and turn them into an absolute stud.
No doubt about it. It's all about where you land sometimes.
Absolutely. And all in all, that's all we got for you for the running back position. Nick Durst, Michael Rockman, this is Destination Draft Day. We'll be back on Monday to talk about all things wide receiver. Hopefully you guys have a good weekend. We want to thank everyone in the comment section for the comments and everyone who's viewing the show today. Thank you for watching us ramble on about, things no one cares about, right? But we want to thank you guys so much. We want to thank Landry Football for the platform to do it. And we'll see you guys on Monday. Take care.